So this is our friend, another Indie Media Award honoree, Kevin Gosztola, over at the Dissenter.
Gosztola.
This is a crazy story, and I really did not see anybody cover this. All right. Next. Sorry, that's classified. So what happened? The Classification Reform Bill is a proposed legislation that seeks to give the president and security agencies more power to maintain secrets. The bill's been met with mixed reactions, with some arguing that it's necessary for national security, while others believe that it's a threat to democracy. I don't know about democracy, but definitely freedom.
Yeah.
The bill proposes to amend the current classification system, which classifies information as either top secret, secret, or confidential. It seeks to introduce a new category of protected information, which would be subject to even stricter controls and limited access. Yikes. So proponents of the bill argue that it's necessary for national security and to protect sensitive information from falling into the wrong hands. Not necessarily wrong. They point out that the current classification system is outdated, which it is, and does not adequately protect against modern threats such as cyber attacks. It does not. They also argue that the bill includes provisions for the increased oversight and accountability to ensure that the new powers are not abused. This includes regular reporting requirements and the establishment of an independent review board to oversee the classification process. More bureaucracy. Yay! Just what we needed, right?
Yay.
So opponents of the bill argue that it's a threat to democracy and could be used to suppress free speech and dissent. Yes. They point out that the new protected category of information is vaguely defined and could be used to classify information that should be available to the public. Yes, wrong hands meaning Biden's garage. Or at the University of Delaware, let's release Tara Reade's records. They also argue that the increased powers given to the president and security agencies could be abused, particularly in the absence of adequate oversight. This could lead to a situation where the government is able to suppress information that's embarrassing or inconvenient rather than truly sensitive. Do I hear Julian Assange? Yes, well, it's of course being written by Gosztola. One of the major concerns with the Classification Reform Bill is its potential impact on whistleblowers. The bill includes provisions for increased penalties for leaking classified information, which could deter individuals from coming forward with the evidence of wrongdoing. What a surprise. This could have serious implications for accountability and transparency, as whistleblowers play an important role in exposing corruption and abuse of power. They at least have that much right. Critics argue that the bill could be used to silence those who seek to hold the government accountable. That's pretty much a good summary. That the classification also has international implications. So this was also a nice look that nobody really, I hadn't thought about when I first thought about this. I was really thinking about how it applied domestically, but particularly in terms of intel sharing between countries. That some critics involved with the bill, some critics argue that the bill could damage relationships with key allies by limiting the amount of info that can be shared. But others point out that the bill could be seen as hypocritical, given that the U.S. government's criticism of other countries for their lack of transparency and respect for human rights. Again, Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. This could damage the country's reputation and undermine its ability to promote democracy and freedom around the world. Okay.
Yeah, dude, this thing's awful.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? It's clearly written by an American. Oh yeah, it's bad. So let's go back to me and Reef, and let's go to the actual Gosztola article, and you're gonna be like, oh, that was yikes. That one was pretty bad. So let's go back.
I've yet to see a good one. Like,
okay, so it would give them even more power to maintain secrets, support the dissenter if you can. It's like $10 a month or less. But then for decades, right? Congress has allowed the White House and the wider executive branch to assert control over classified information. I think a lot of this is also in response to what happened with Trump, not just with Jack Teixeira and the Discord leaks and a bunch of these leaks that have come out, but members of Congress have been complicit when it comes to a system that classifies more than 50 million documents a year, which is a benefit for institutions in a national security state that are dependent on secrecy. Right? But a group of U.S. senators unveiled legislation on May 10th of this year that they claim will significantly deal with government secrecy and reform the classification process. But a closer read of the proposed legislation, and here is a link to the PDF in the article, suggests that if changes were adopted, power would further be entrenched in the hands of the U.S. president and security agencies. Changes would only address the problem cosmetically, which is exactly what Democrats like to do.
Like in the South, that would be called putting lipstick on a pig. I don't know why they call it that, but they do.
Well,
and I think that says more about the South than the South would like to admit.
yeah. So under the Classification Reform Act of 2023, which is, of course, the opposite of what it seeks to do, the head of the Office of the DNI would be designated an executive agent for classification and declassification, and they would be responsible for developing technical solutions for automating declassification, and they would direct resources for the development, coordination, and implementation of a federal classification and declassification system for government records. That doesn't sound too frightening that one person would be in charge of that. The head of the Office of the DNI. Crab. Welcome, Crab. I see somebody's dropping crabs in there, Fred.
I don't see him. I was looking. But
I don't know.
I saw a little crab rave going on.
The bill would establish an executive committee on classification programs and declassification programs that included head of the ODNI, Undersecretary of Defense for Intel, Secretary of Energy, Secretary of State, Director of National Declassification Center. Would be pretty important to include. The Director of Information Security Oversight Board, the Director of OMB, and any other individuals that the head of ODNI believes should serve on the committee. That makes it kind of broad.
Hey, we use different words than that now. We don't call it broads anymore.
Right.
All right.
Additionally, it states the president shall establish procedures for declassifying information that was previously classified. Oh, Trump would have had a field day with this. Categories for the classification and declassification of information would be determined by the president. Why are they doing this a year before they're about to lose the White House? There would even be a process for reclassification of information where the president and security agencies could claw back information that was already released to the public if they determined that reclassification was required to prevent significant and demonstrable damage to the national security.
So that's if we put out
that's
like
Nord Stream. That's Nord Stream.
Or Kennedy, or I mean any of the stuff that might have been declassified recently.
Oh, we got a patron? Corn Pop was a bad dude. Oh, we love Poppy around here. And he ran a bunch of bad boys. Nice. That's great. There's somebody signed up. Thank you. Patreon.com/Indie News Network.
Was a bad dude.
Thank you. So, again, leaving it up to
ran a bunch of bad boys.
Yeah. We know, Joe. Any legislation that further cements the power the president and the DNI have over classified information will make it harder to deal with rampant secrecy. Yeah. Presently, DNI Avril Haines, oh God, has won support from senators by acknowledging that overclassification of information poses a threat to national security as well as democracy, but ODNI may not always be led by someone open to taking responsibility for secrecy. It's also unclear what Haines has done to meaningfully break with the status quo. The answer is that's why she's there.
Oh no, I Avrilled my Haines.
God. The EFF sued the U.S. government to force the release of classified rulings from the Foreign Intelligence Service Court, a surveillance court. That would show how the court interprets key provisions of the laws that authorize mass surveillance. Shout out to the EFF. We covered one of their articles a couple weeks ago. Congress mandated the disclosure of the decisions when the USA Freedom Act was passed in 2015, but the government refused to release the opinions. It was not until August 2022 that ODNI under Haines released the documents. That was that wonderful Trump administration. And then again, you've got 2 years into the Biden administration, too. It's on both sides. Biden is blue Trump. He is blue Trump, folks. in so many ways. Even then, the decisions were heavily redacted. What a surprise. EFF noted, redactions make understanding the importance of some of the newly released opinions difficult. That's kind. The
Yep.
automatic declassification of opinions for the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or FISA court, might be expected under the proposed legislation, yet one can imagine Haynes and others in U.S. national security agencies frustrating efforts to declassify opinions that might open agencies up to scrutiny when it comes to mass surveillance. Of course.
Well, pause. So this is saying that FISA court documents, which journalists use to out particular entities all the time, right, could be reclassified.
Correct.
Therefore, they could literally come after the journalist who published them.
For publishing classified information.
Right, at least to unpublish it. And it's like you can't unpublish it. Like you can't, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like it's out, it exists.
right.
You know?
Well, their answer is well, you have to get every copy and burn it.
Okay. What, you're gonna make like
The Wayback
like
Machine.
you got to go steal people's memories? Okay. You know, I mean, this is essentially like, you know, oh yeah, don't worry about that Oliver North thing. We reclassified that. Just forget about that.
Right.
You know?
Or these Trump documents that were sitting in there in
Right.
his house. We've now reclassified them, and they are top secret versus declassified. Yep. And now he's under investigation for taking classified documents out of the White House. Yep. Something like that. Yep. It's draconian. It's gross. Okay. So
yeah,
the McCarran Internal Security Act of 1950 tinkered with and expanded the Espionage Act, and the Intel Identities Protection Act was passed in 1982 to criminalize the unauthorized disclosure of any information that could lead to the identification of covert agents or intel sources. In both of those instances, Congress did not attempt to curtail the executive branch's ability to keep information classified. Senators and representatives were instead concerned with threats to the government's ability to protect state secrets. Well, they were all really on the same team then, too. I mean, that was the case from 2010 to 2013 when WikiLeaks published documents from Chelsea Manning and The Guardian, and other media outlets published the documents from Edward Snowden. Congress was focused on giving security and military agencies the tools they needed to identify insider threats and prevent leaks. Well, I know Obama was famous for like trying to keep a tight lid on any leaks and any discussion of what the hell was going on behind the scenes. Congress could try to wrest control the president has over classified information. They could try to wrest it away. The Congressional Research Service noted in February 2023 that the Supreme Court has never settled the question of whether Congress may check the power of the president when it comes to government secrecy. So, independent of the president, the Atomic Energy Act, how the hell are they pulling this, was passed by Congress in 1946 to create a regime for protecting nuclear-related restricted data. This is where they're coming up with that restricted nonsense, right? Congress could create a similar but more ambitious system for declassification, which they could, but the classification reform proposed by senators avoids any confrontation with the White House that might spark accusations that Congress is interfering with the power of the president. It also skirts any conflict with U.S. intel agency chiefs. It doesn't even put anybody from the Senate or any of the intel committees on any of those committees that they're looking to create. This is really draconian, again, crazy. But welcome to the Biden administration and the Uniparty, right? The National Security Council, which advises the president on security and foreign policy, would likely play a big role in determining the categories of information that should be declassified. That makes sense. The council is made up of the VP, Secretary of State, SecDef, Secretary of Energy, Treasury, Attorney General, Secretary of Homeland Security, Ambassador to the UN, the administrator for the for USAID, that's Samantha Power. Oh God, the White House Chief of Staff, White House National Security Advisor, and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is a military advisor. So again,
The Joint Chiefs of Staff.
No Senate or House representation at all. Two of those individuals, the Secretary of State and Energy, would also sit on the Executive Committee for Classification and Declassification of Information. So they're going to have the ability to classify things they consider to be inconvenient or potentially damaging or criminal activity exposed by the United States that the United States was committing. Yep. It's unlikely that this executive committee would ever challenge the advisors for the national security state who directly influence the president's decisions because they're part of the web of secretive intelligence and military institutions that maintain databases filled with billions of secrets, as we know. So if it's passed, it might contain a reclassification process, as we said, that would present transparency and open government advocates with an easy way for bureaucrats to undermine everything legislation is intended to do. Matthew Aid uncovered a secret reclassification program in 2006 that he detailed in a report for National Security Archive at GWU. You can read all about that. This happened because Bill Clinton signed an executive order related to classified national security information that required U.S. agencies to declassify all of their historical records that were 25 years old or older by the end of 1999, except for those documents that fell within certain specified exempt categories of records, like the Kennedy assassinations, or such as documents relating to intel sources and methods, cryptology, or war plans still in effect.
Cryptology.
Right.
Which is the study of code.
Right. Well, we don't want to let our foreign nations know how we do it.
Yeah, know how we encrypt.
Even though they all have been able to get into all of it, and especially the Israelis.
AI stuff is the next thing with that.
The CIA, our friends, not so friends over at the CIA, and various other U.S. intel agencies resisted procedures requiring the mandatory release of information. What a surprise! Together, the most influential parts of the national security state united to convince National Archives that thousands of records should never have been disclosed to the public. What a shock! Such an episode could easily happen again if Congress includes a provision establishing the reclassification of records. We just talked about that. Like the Clinton executive order, the bill would instruct agencies to automatically declassify information 25 years after the date it was marked classified. But on top of that, there are sections that allow the president to postpone the release of records. And he'd be able to postpone the declassification after something has been declassified for 25 years for up to 10 additional years.
Yep.
That postponement could be applied to a record that's over 50 years old, like many of the files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy that are still classified. And we're still trying to get access to those. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I don't know if it was us who did it.
It was the CIA.
I don't know.
Senator Ron Wyden, who is one of the senators who unveiled the legislation, is correct that far too many records are classified. Something has to be done to deal with the problem. However, the solution cannot possibly be empowering the president and the very agencies that have thrived off government secrecy so they have more control over when they relinquish control over information. Congress has to carve out a bigger role for itself, or, as Joe Biden loves to say, nothing will fundamentally change. That's exactly as the Democrats intended, folks.
Come on, man.
It's working as planned. So, fun.
You know the thing.
No, I don't know the thing, and you don't either.
It's the only way
you
can find room to pay for it.
A Democrat. Oh, that's such a... What's the... What, I don't even remember which Jesse song that is.
That's
that has
the secret.
Yeah, that's the secret. I came to represent... Dude, that's great, dude. Shout out Jesse Jet. We love you, Jesse Jet.